Just a little bit of a heads up, this video might be a little more slapdash than my usual fare. I want to get this discussion out real quickly to go with the announcement, because it's, kind of relevant to the moment. So, without further ado, let's get talking. Pokkén Tournament just officially unveiled their newest newcomer, the first DLC newcomer, and it's none other than Darkrai. Yes, the King of Nightmares is entering the ring. Moveset seems very interesting overall. Seems to be built around a combination of darkness and energy risk, which is both unique and kind of a slap to the face of everyone who keeps arguing that since the dark type sorta kinda translates to evil in Japanese, that the type only includes underhanded heal tactics and not elemental darkness in any regard. And this guy's entire moveset is built around darkness, which just goes to show you that Pokemon types do have multiple aspects to them. And despite the Japanese name, the dark type does include darkness. Anyway though, he does seem to have an interesting mechanic in the form of Dark Void, which takes the form in this game of a buff that activates on a shift to dual phase under certain conditions. We're not exactly sure what those are yet, but it's only a matter of time until we find out. His moveset has a very heavy focus on traps and setups, which would explain the technique designation, since it seems that to get the most mileage out of those, you'll need to have an inherent knowledge of the character and how he functions. He does seem to have quite a few strengths going off the trailer. He's pretty mobile and his damage output is there, especially with Dark Void under effect, which would go hand in hand with his stat arrangement in the main Pokemon games, where he has, if I remember correctly, 135 base special attack and 125 speed, which is pretty impressive even for a legendary. He also looks to have strong zoning tools when they're used intelligently, to the point where you can use them to pin down opponents and even function as anti-rushdown tools, which will be very nice since, zoners usually have a bit of trouble against that kind of thing. He does have some weaknesses though. He's a big target, possibly one of the biggest in the game, on par with the likes of Garchomp, Suicune, Machamp, etc. But unlike them, he only has a subpar 540 hit points, which means he's not going to be able to take nearly as much punishment as the heavyweights. His traps also might not help against other zoners, other characters who can just sit back and pelt him with projectiles or do whatever they want without having to worry about the traps. And since his moveset does seem to rely on setups quite a bit, that might make him weak to heavy pressure and characters who can just get in his face and never let him breathe. He looks to be a very interesting character and definitely one that's going to stand out even amongst all the oddballs on the roster already. So let's talk about the implications of Darkrai's reveal. For one, he's hitting the arcades on July 20th, very soon. There's no date revealed yet for the Wii U, but considering every character who's been added to the arcade has also been in the Wii U version, it's not a matter of if, but when. As far as further DLC goes, this is actually very interesting. You see, if you've been following Pokkén news, you probably heard that a while back, some people went and data mined the latest patch for the Wii U version, and they found some leftover code for some moves implying that a few certain characters were in the works, and Darkrai was one of them. So, because of that, it's pretty safe to guess that Scizor and Empoleon are in the works as DLC. We don't know when they'll be ready, but there's reason to believe they're coming at some point. Beyond them though, it's hard to tell exactly who else could be happening or how many more characters we'll get overall. I've seen some people assume that there's going to be 4 total DLC characters to fill the character select screen out, with the last one being from Generation 7 to quote-unquote promote Sun and Moon, but I don't think it's quite that simple. You see, they've expanded the CSS once before. For the original arcade version, it was actually just a measly 5x5 box that would only fit 14 characters plus the random button. They expanded it to 7x5 for the Wii U version, and presumably the arcade version is going to do the same now. So it's not out of the question to say that if they do want to add more characters than just 4, all they'd have to do is expand it further, and they have no problem with doing that. It's also worth mentioning that for all the whole cross-promotion argument gets brought up, it's not really that valid. It tends not to be the modus operandi of Nintendo and the games they produce, the fighting games they produce. When a character gets added to Smash, it's generally for some reason other than just to shallowly promote the newest game. Even Corrin was for more reason than that, even though there are a lot of people out there who want to insist otherwise. And so, just saying offhand, oh, they're just going to throw in someone from Gen 7 to promote Sun and Moon, it's not going to be as simple as that. So as far as who else could come, who does Darkrai rule out? Well, overall, since uniqueness does seem to be a very big factor here, just as it was for Smash 4, it seems that we can rule out characters whose movesets would be very similar to the abilities Darkrai is showing here. So, mainly dark types with a heavy emphasis on elemental darkness, or possibly some illusory or reality warping powers. You're probably guessing the main candidate here who's probably out of the running would be Zoroark. Although this might also rule out Greninja and his sneaky ninja stuff due to a combination of both Darkrai and the fact that Sceptile does tend to pull from a few ninja-y tactics himself. I mentioned this on a previous Pokkén video I've done about roster speculation. If you've seen that, go ahead. If not, it's an entertaining watch, but it's kind of off the mark now that Darkrai was never mentioned in it. But, on the other hand, this doesn't necessarily rule out all other dark types. After all, we got 4 fire types in the base roster, and they managed to find something unique for each of those 4 to do. So a third dark type can definitely happen if the dev team thinks there's enough uniqueness to be found there that it would help it stand out from the 2 dark types we have now. So what could we be seeing going forward? Your guess is as good as mine beyond the 2 that were data mined. So it's kind of hard to say exactly what their full DLC plans are going to be going forward, but let's just speculate a little. Let's say if I were to have some kind of say in what characters would be making it as post-game content, here's how I would do it. I'd try to set the DLC up into 3 waves. The first one being 4 characters to fill out the character select screen as is, and the second and third waves being 2 sets of 3 characters to add 1 more column to each side of the character select screen, giving us a total size of a 9x3 box and 26 characters total. Wave 1, which we are technically starting now, would be focusing on the quote-quote middle generations. That would be generations 2 to 4. I know that's not the best designation, but it works for the context of this. So that wave would feature Darkrai, which we now know is coming, Scizorn and Polion, which have been seen in the data mining, and then... oh come on, I can afford to be biased here when the character has been mentioned and name-dropped by one of the head developers as a character they wanted to get into the base game but just weren't able to for some unknown reason. Wave 2 would then be from the quote-quote modern generations, 5 and 6, and they bring in 3 characters from those 2 generations, which honestly haven't seen a whole lot of representation so far, and it's been disappointing that they haven't because there's a lot of potential there. And so we bring in 3 characters from those 2 generations that would do some unique stuff and stand out compared to the characters that currently are on the roster already. Wave 2 would be coming sometime around, say, the fall or winter. Then Wave 3, which would be coming around the spring-ish, possibly around when the NX drops. Who knows, maybe there's an NX port of Pokkén in the works. And that would be where they bring in 3 characters from Generation 7. It wouldn't exactly be cross-promotion if Sun and Moon is already out and the characters just happen to be relevant at the moment. And you know there's going to be a bunch of fan favorites and characters people are going to want to see in Pokkén. So it would be for people's benefit if we had one last wave of DLC to bring in some characters from the newest and most relevant games at the time. So that'd be more or less what I would do. How likely is that? Hell if I know. So that's all for now, but don't worry, I'll be sure to chime in with a few more words if or when more DLC drops. Those of you who've just stumbled onto this video, be sure to check out the rest of my channel. There's some more discussions about Pokkén and other games, as well as some Let's Plays and some various other content, including, if I set things up the way I hope to, there will be some competitive Pokkén matches coming in the near future, and who knows, maybe Darkrai might be featured among them. He seems like he's got some potential as a secondary. And if you've got anything to say about Darkrai or potential future DLC plans, leave a note in the comments. Let's get some discussion going, see what everyone thinks. And so with that, thanks for listening, and be safe, guys. With this guy around now, you might want to sleep a safe distance away.